So welcome everyone to 30 Minutes of Wisdom. I'm your host, Robin Blank Mascari, and we get together twice a month to share thought leaders to support your personal and professional development. And as you know, I love to share Jim Rohn's quote: work twice as hard on yourself as you do on your business because you are your business. And today, our guest is a very special man who I've known for a very long time. And yes. I'm going to give a little background on him and then a little history about the two of us. So he is referred to as the #1 global guru in customer service for the last 5 years. He's written 14 books, I think, and he has been all over the world. He lives in Singapore for the last 30 years, and he's been uplifting people all over this planet since the moment I met him and way before that. And, just as a little interest, we met in the Rose Bowl in the 80s when we were both judges at the World Frisbee Championships. And that leads me into where we're going to get started. But I first want to welcome Ron Kaufman.
Delighted to be here, Robin, and greetings to everyone who has the privilege and the pleasure of listening and watching it.
Yay. So let's start out. Where did this start? Because you have made a huge contribution in hundreds and hundreds of organizations in, I think, 62 countries around the world, and have written all these books. But where did it start? What
Great
got you
question.
on this path?
Yeah, it actually has to do with how you and I met.
I know, that's why I had to mention it.
The high school that I went to in Connecticut was the second school in the world to have the rules for the game called Ultimate Frisbee. It was started in a high school in New Jersey. A math teacher from that school came to our school. He brought the rules, started to teach us. And Ultimate today is a multi-million player game all over the planet. It's recognized at an Olympic level. But at the time, it was scrap. It was sport. It was anybody could play, bare feet. I'm a little guy. I'm not going to be on the basketball, baseball, or football team, but the Frisbee team would let me play. And the great underlying phenomenon about Ultimate Frisbee is one of the key rules. It's called the spirit of the game. And what it means is that the players on the field are responsible for the quality of play. Until just recently, there have never been referees on the field. And even now there's a big, argument in the field about should there be referees or not referees. If you don't have referees, who works it out? Who settles the disputes? It's got to be the players themselves. And what happens then is that there's a mutual attention, a care, a concern for the quality of play, but also for the spirit of play. And to me, that makes sense for life. All of us are here on this game board called the planet for a limited period of time, and we are responsible for the spirit of the game. And then that extended into my business life and travel, and it's carried on. But you were there with me at the beginning.
At the beginning, well, a little bit after the beginning, but and just a fun fact: you are in the Ultimate Frisbee Hall of Fame, also, aren't you?
I am, and I'm in a special category called the Johnny Appleseeds, because we're this group who, from our high schools, we all went off. We started all of our college teams, then we started playing with each other, and that began the intercollegiate era. In my particular case, I spent 2 of my college years overseas. And so I started traveling around the world, translating the rules, starting players associations, setting up early tournaments and festivals and family play days. And so really that Johnny Appleseed generosity is something that's also infused the way I live my life.
And just a little bit more background, because I think it's really interesting. You grew up traveling all over the world.
I did, and the Frisbee company I created was called Disc Covering the World. By the way, the company still exists, although the new owner couldn't quite see the humor in that, and so he just calls it Discovering the World, which is close.
Okay, that's okay. Well, we could go off on so many tangents, but let's talk about uplifting service. And
Sure.
You've been in Singapore for 30 years.
Right.
And what got you there, and what kind of work have you been doing since you've been there?
Great. So way back in the 70s and 80s, Singapore's economy was based on low-cost manufacturing. And as a former British colony, it had English language, rule of law, data processing, contact centers could be there, et cetera. And then the 80s came, and most of that manufacturing moved to China for lower cost. And an enormous amount of the back office and data operations went to India, also a lower cost base. And so this little country of Singapore, it's only 5 million people, one small island, no natural resources, had to figure out how to reinvent itself to be more valuable in the world. And they recognized that that meant going up the value chain, which meant more services. So today, Singapore is known for legal services, financial services, medical services, education services, convention and hospitality services, supply chain and logistics services. But that wasn't the case back then. So there was one company, Singapore Airlines, that had developed a global reputation for outstanding service. How come then? Because from day one, first flight, they had to compete with international airlines. And so the standard for them to succeed was already high from the beginning. And they realized while we weren't going to have a huge global network or necessarily the latest planes at the time, they could double down on this human element called service and developed a tagline, which was service even other airlines talk about, which gave this tremendous sense of pride to the people who worked there. Like, let's go show the world what we can do. So when I came to Singapore in 1990, it was to take what the airline had figured out and how do you then teach that to every other business in the country and government agency, not to run an airline, but to run their organization with an outstanding quality of service. And then that was the project that became a week, a month, 7 months, and now I've been here for 31 years.
31. Oh my gosh. Well, I've read many of your books, but the book Uplifting Service, it shifted me in really understanding we use this term customer service all over the place, but I don't think we really do a very good job at defining it. And you've taken it to a whole nother level. And what you share in that book really has deeply affected me and in my daily life. So would you kind of give the definition of customer service
Sure.
and then chunk it up to uplifting service for us?
Yeah, I'd love to. And that is exactly what the book is about. And by the way, people can go to the website and get the whole first section of the book on a complimentary basis to download. It's just ronkaufman.com. When you get there, find the section that says resources and books. So when I got here, no one had a good definition of service that I could really operationalize and work with and scale. I heard things like the customer is always right, which isn't true, or treat other people.
Southwest Airlines, by the way, teaches their people that that's not always true.
Right, right. The customer is always the customer, but it doesn't mean that they're always right about what happened. They may be right about what matters to them, and that's important to acknowledge. So the customer is not always right. And then there was the one about treat other people the way you would like to be treated. That's horrible advice because other people are not like you. They're like them. So rather than going in saying, well, this is what I want, so I'm going to do that for you, I should go in saying, what is it that you want? So I wrote the definition of service that goes like this. Service is taking action to create value for someone. If the someone is yourself, it's called self-service. If the someone is somebody buying from you, it's called customer service. If it's somebody you work with, it's called service partnership. Service is taking action to create value for someone. Now, where that begins is not with the action. It begins with understanding what someone wants, needs, hopes for, wishes to avoid. Therefore, you can figure out what they would value. Then you can choose the right action to take. And that is service. Uplifting service is figuring out and taking the next action that will create more value for someone. Or if you want to go all the way, we can say, uplifting service is taking the next action to create more value for someone you care about. And the distinction of care is not just create value. It's actually be concerned and committed to the well-being of that person in this moment and into the future. Whoa, that's a very big and different way to think and look at service and care and even the underlying phenomenon of love. Now, there's one more piece that's covered quite deeply in the book. Being able to deliver uplifting service is one thing, but building a culture that consistently supports and reinforces uplifting service amongst colleagues and with customers and with suppliers and in the ecosystem in which the organization exists, that is another undertaking which half the book is dedicated to.
Well, you talk about that distinction because a lot of companies have customer service departments.
Right.
Well, what you're saying, and I'm hearing you say, is it's everybody's responsibility in the
Everybody's
entire.
responsibility to serve well with and for each other so that the whole organization is in the best possible condition to serve the customer, listen to the customer, be proactive for the customer, respond quickly when there's something that happens that the customer needs or that wasn't expected, and on and on and on, including attracting and keeping and developing the best talent.
Okay, so now the next step, when I read your book, the part that touched me the most was that every exchange that happens, both parties are uplifted. Would you address that for a little bit?
Yeah, so the book Uplifting Service, what a title, huh? I chose it specifically, good morning, because the idea of improving your service, doing a better job, okay, that's uplifting for the customer. But you want to do it in a way that's also uplifting for the service provider. So there's that sense of pride, there's that sense of passion, that sense of personal commitment, that sense of I did a good job. We don't want service providers to ever be seen or talked about or consider themselves as a low, subservient position. So, in my definition, if service is taking action to create value, then the service provider is a value creator. And that is the most esteemed position of all. So, uplift the experience of the recipient, the customer, uplift the experience of the service provider, and finally, uplift the sense of dignity for us all in society, that being in service to one another is a distinguished phenomenon and a worthy undertaking to do with your life. So I have a tagline that a life well lived contributes to the well-being of others.
You
The point
know,
is not to die with the most toys. I mean, that kind of an absurd phrase is from an old ancient past that has damaged not only lives, but the planet. If we actually think, how much good can I give and do in the short time that I'm here, now you've oriented yourself properly to uplift the experience of service and the quality of service that you provide.
I love it. And you in your life absolutely embody what you're talking about, and you do it every single day. Do you want to just briefly share what your daily habit is?
It depends on whether I'm in Singapore or I'm in the Maldives. And let me explain. My wife and I,
Both of those would be great to hear.
right,
Yeah.
we sort of have two homes and we call each of them our home away from home. So my wife is a scuba diver. We met scuba diving in Australia. She was running the shop. I was the customer. Oh, the quality of service was so good. I just had to go back and get that mermaid to come join me for life. And now we've been together almost 20 years. And when we're in Singapore, candidly, we're working hard. We're up in the morning, we're doing webinars, I'm shooting videos, I'm writing books, I'm working with clients, I'm on site in Singapore working with medical clients, for example, right now. We're communicating with our team, we're crossing time zones through different online calls. It's busy. I do take good care of myself by getting out and walking a lot every day. I put a 20-pound weight vest on and get out there and sweat and, have a trainer come over, and I eat mostly vegan. So I'm doing everything I can to be healthy and strong, but I'm working really hard. When we go to the Maldives, which we do 3 or 4 times a year for 2 or 3 weeks each time, we go and we scuba dive every day, 3 times a day. So we recently came back after a 2-year hiatus because of COVID, and in 13 days we did 37 scuba dives. So that's 37 hours underwater. That's about 70 hours on the boat, going out to the dive, between the dives, coming back from the dive. So you can just imagine there's a whole different quality of chill that goes on biologically. It's great for our marriage, but we take one extra hobby along with us. I have this phrase, leave this place better than you found it. So when I go walking, I carry a garbage stick and I clean up the park. But when we go scuba diving, we carry with us mesh bags and we pick up things off the reef that shouldn't be there. Bottles and cans and rope and plastic bags and fishing line. And we've collected tons of this stuff over the years. So it adds a hobby within the hobby.
I love it. It's when I saw your video, and that video is available on your
Gregory
website
Muscari,
too.
WhatsApp audio.
Sorry about that. I thought I had
That's
my
okay. In fact, the video Robin's talking about, if you want to find it really easily, go to YouTube, type in my name, Ron Kaufman, and then one more word, trash. Ron Kaufman, trash. And it will take you to a short little video that a documentary producer did about my hobby inside the hobby of walking, picking up the trash.
I love it. I love it. Well, that video was actually an inspiration, your story, and you had quite an interesting COVID experience. It was kind of life-changing. Can you share how that affected you personally and how it affected your work?
Yes, thank you. My wife and I had never really taken a real vacation. I mean, we go scuba diving, but the place we go is also a client. So we're on and we're still connected with Zoom between the dives, all that. We said, let's go. So we secured a berth on a luxury French cruise ship and we flew to Argentina. And from Buenos Aires, we went down to the Ushuaia, which is down at the tip. And I'd read this book about Ferdinand Magellan, and I wanted to go through Magellan Straits. And so we're on this beautiful French cruise ship, and we got to know the captain, and the wine was good. We were enjoying, and we went through the Magellan Straits, and then COVID started to break out around the world. Fortunately, it never came on the ship. But as we came up the coast of Chile, heading towards Santiago, Valparaiso being the port, Chile closed the border. So the captain had to turn the ship around and go back through the Straits of Magellan the other way. And now we're going up the coast of Argentina, and Argentina closed the border. So then you get to Uruguay, and Uruguay closed the border. And then we got to Brazil. And by the time we got to Brazil, everybody was a little bit freaked out. Like, when are we going to get off this boat? Fortunately, in Rio de Janeiro, we were allowed to get off, but only to go quarantined straight to the airport, straight fly back to Singapore, which we did. Singapore had imposed a 14-day mandatory hotel room quarantine. And my wife and I, by luck of the draw, ended up in the smallest hotel room available to anyone. It was the Holiday Inn Express. And so here are two people in one hotel room, no bathtub, you can be sure about that. The windows didn't even open, and there was enough room in the room to take 6 steps. And the two of us were there together for 14 days. Now, 2 things happened. One is you learn real quickly to manage your voice. I learned real quickly that you don't even do something like, and make that little facial expression that I might get away with at home, because then she can go into a different room and I can go into a different room and we'll meet again in 30 or 45 minutes. Here, for the next 30 and 45 seconds, you're still right there with each other. And for our marriage, it was fabulous. It was like going into a cocoon. Many people don't know that when a caterpillar spins a cocoon, it releases an enzyme that melts the caterpillar down to this just gooey, protein-rich substance, out of which can be created a butterfly or a moth. And so we literally came out of those 14 days genuinely transformed about the way we were with each other and the way we looked at life. And so we changed our business. We reduced the size of our team. We got much more focused on doing, the kind of work with clients that really mattered to us, not just trying to grow for growth's sake. And it's been a wonderful 2 years since.
I love it. So you took a challenging opportunity, and as Napoleon Hill says, with every adversity is the seed of equal or greater benefit. And you mastered that one. So getting back to the service piece, because a lot of people, we're all in the service business, everyone, all the time, but we forget. And what happens when a customer or client is really uplifted and well served? How does that affect business? How does that affect the relationship? What happens long term to the company because of that intention and creation of uplifting service?
Yeah, I think all of the statistics make this pretty clear and prove the case that delighted customers are the ones that tend to behave in more loyal manners. And there are 9 different behaviors of loyal customer. It's not just repeat purchase. It's not just that they're more likely to try other things that you might have available to sell, whether they're products or services. It's not just that they'll give a glowing recommendation or review for you on social media, or specifically make recommendations to somebody else, a colleague or a friend or a family member, but also really loyal customers, people who had great experience. They want you to stick around as the provider. So if something does go wrong, these are the ones that are going to come to you and want to be in collaboration, not only to get it fixed for them, but to help you fix whatever went wrong in the first place. So they'll bring you good suggestions. They'll bring you ideas for improvement. The most loyal customers, if they have a great experience with, for example, one of your competitors, they'll be the type that actually come to you and say, hey, I had this experience over here. I thought you might want to know about it. Why would they do that? Because they care about you, because they want you to sustain and continue to thrive in the future so you can continue to extend this relationship you've built with each other. So cultivating loyalty through overly generous service devotion and commitment makes good business sense.
Totally. And, I think people forget that it's all about relationship, and what you said early on in the beginning is, do unto others. Well, you're right. We're all different. So we have to take the time to find out what others want. And that seems to be missing so often in our world. And so,
Yeah, Robin, it's actually been missing in our language from
Mhm.
early on. So it's been for quite a few hundred years where this idea of the self has been conceptualized like a separate entity, like my true self, my authentic self, my inner self, my wonderful self. Well, the self is a social phenomenon. There is no self that didn't get born into someone else's relationships, nurtured, cared for, developed, educated, all of it. We are a social existence, and yet we talk about ourselves and often think about ourselves like we're something separate from. And that leads to all kinds of craziness and psychosis and, real serious issues. It would be much healthier to wake up and say, I am part of this. I'm connected with other people, and then go about living your day and your life.
Interesting. Interesting. And it is so true. We need new languaging. And I said something the other day, and you said, oh, that's the problem. I said, our company's working on enhancing the user experience. And you said, I think, you tell me what you said and what would
Well,
be
I
a
mean, think
better
about
way. What would be a
think.
better way to say that one?
I mean, think about what the term user connotes. It's like
It doesn't feel very good.
it's not a human. And it comes from a mechanical age of dumb terminals where users sit and access we with the wisdom at the data center, right? That goes out through pipes. And that was just during an earlier era of develop in the computational way of thinking, like everything can be measured. No, relationships, love, intimacy, care, the really authentically deep, emotive human phenomenon. Medicine, they say, look, we can measure that. Well, yeah, but you're coming up with a second order expression of a first order phenomenon.
So what would be a better term?
Customer. Even better than that would be a service partner. You could refer to somebody who purchases your goods as a loyal collaborator. I mean, there's all kinds of language that could be developed.
Okay.
I'm doing some very interesting work right now because I'm settled down in Singapore rather than 100 flights of travel every year as I was during the pre-COVID era. With the medical system here, the healthcare system here. And it's extraordinary to really look at the entire landscape of healthcare and realize that how it constitutes the recipient of service and those that deliver service. In fact, the word customer isn't used, the word is patient. And the etymology of patient is someone suffering. The etymology of doctor is teacher. The etymology of nurse is to nourish. So you have this interesting triangle going on here where, of course, why do nurses give more empathetic care? Well, the whole construct that they've been raised in is to nourish the person who is suffering. or to nourish the doctor-patient relationship. But the doctor is trained in medical school to know the answer. How else can you be the teacher? So you have this awkward kind of expectation. And what I'm very, very interested in now is the issue of what's called population health. How do we encourage the population to reconfigure its own understanding of who we are as recipients of service from the healthcare system? Clearly, we are more service partners than we should think of ourselves as mere receiving customers, because the vast majority of healthcare is going to happen in your home. You only want to go to the healthcare institution for the necessary intervention. And as much as you can do before you have to go there, you'd like to do on a preventive or a prophylactic or a primary basis. And afterwards, you want to do as much recovery as possible in the home. So then where is that line, and how should we grow with each other? And we're talking about something that touches every human being and one of the largest industries of the planet.
Interesting. Well, that, just the name of things can completely shift everything, user, patient. So, bringing this back to business
Yes.
and the responsibility of the person who is contacting for service and the person providing it. How can me as a recipient support the person providing the service
Fabulous question.
and helping them get even better so that we both get what we want even more?
Right. So recognize that as a customer who's reaching out, let's say to a customer service center who needs assistance with something, that person does this all the time, every day. And there are certain things that they're just going to have to get hold of in order to help you at all. For example, who are you? Are you already a customer? Are you somebody trying to become a customer? Are you a repeat? Are you a frustrated customer? Are you a customer who's right on the verge of making a purchase? Are you worried about something that doesn't work the way you thought it was? Are you trying to return something, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? So if you go into that interaction well prepared to make available to the person who you're contacting so they can help you what they're going to need to be able to help you, well, that's already step one. Rather than, I got a problem, and then they've got to gradually pick a way to get what they need to be able to help you. Think about it, document it, pull it together, and then report it in a manner that the person can just very quickly orient themselves towards your situation. That's number one. Number two is, remember, that also is a human being. And what you're asking for now is their effort and their help to give you value. So yes, you are the customer, but in this situation, you're really service partners. In other words, you could also take action that would create more value for them, not only by having your information ready, but you could be the one that says, hi, my name is Ron. What's yours? Cindy. Hi, Cindy. Listen, I just want to let you know, I really appreciate your help. I'm so glad I was able to get in touch with you. Let me explain my situation. Oh, well, right away, Cindy's realizing she's not going to have to deal with somebody who's in this miserable mood, who wants to blow off steam and bile and negativity, and she's got to deal with it. I mean, nobody wants to deal with that, and they're trained to be able to deal with it if it happens, but you don't want to be that customer. You want to be the one who uplifts the person who you're asking to uplift you.
Okay, so you did something really important in the beginning of that conversation. You asked their name and you addressed them by their name. And people love to hear their name, don't they?
They do.
It's one of those simple things. I go back to a Covey quote that is one of my favorites. He says, the deepest need of the human soul is to be appreciated, acknowledged, affirmed, and understood. Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
And so just by asking someone's name, and you also said, I appreciate. So you're starting off not just with an angry tone of needing help, but you already are appreciating them before they even start. So what's going to happen with them? They're going to want to give, right?
That's right. That's right. And
So
of course, Robin, at the end of that interaction, you're going to wrap it up by saying, I just want to say thank you so much. I know you guys work really hard, and I'm one of those customers that really appreciates what you've done for me. Thanks. By the way, if your company has a survey of some sort, or if there's an email address where I can send in a compliment, I'll be happy to do that. bing, bing,
Oh,
bing.
yeah.
You've
Whew.
just uplifted that human being. And you know, sometimes that actually affects people's careers.
It does.
It
Absolutely.
does.
So we want to encourage people to do that. Get the name and report back to the manager and say, I got extraordinary service that uplifted me, took care of me by so and so this date. It's not hard. It's not hard. So we just have like 2 more minutes, and I want to see what other words of wisdom would you like to share with our audience? Because we're in the business that I'm in, we call it the caring and sharing business. You know, that's our job, is to connect with people, care about them, and share something that might be of value. But what other things would you like to share in our last 2 minutes?
Well, I like the way you ended the question where you go, you know, in your last 2 minutes. Anyone listening to this call is probably, I don't imagine that there are going to be many people who are in their tweens, you know, the 12 and 14-year-olds. Huh? And we may not have too many listeners who are in their teens. You're going to get some adults here. And so what you've got is people who are young adults are thinking, you know, what should I do with my life? I mean, you know, there's a lot going on here, lots of change happening. People mid-career tend to ask questions like, is this all there is to life? I mean, am I missing something here? And then later on, it's what should I do with the rest of my life? But really, all three of those recognize something, which is that to be a human being is a social phenomenon, but it's not in this body forever. We are mortal. We want to live younger and live longer, and that's fantastic. But the arc of life is what it is. So when you hear people say death is just a disease, we can conquer that. No, I mean, we can live more vibrantly and more vitally and probably live a heck of a lot longer. That's fine. But mortality has a good quality to it because it forces all of us to think, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? How do you want to be on this planet? Is your concern to just selfishly accumulate as much as you can for your own personal enjoyment? Or can you extend your sense of yourself into a social manner and say, what can I do? How can I live that will contribute to the well-being of others? And it's not just others now, it's on into the future. So live your life as if it matters, because it does. You are social, which means other people are observing you, appreciating you, and hopefully admiring and loving you every day.
Thank you. And that is absolutely, you know, when we are giving and making a difference, you know, it enhances the quality of our life. There's an upliftment right there. Another favorite quote is from, oh my gosh, Albert Schweitzer. He goes,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what your destiny will be, but one thing I do know is those who have sought and found how to serve will truly be happy.
Albert Schweitzer, who lived his own life that way.
He did.
Robin, the next book I'm writing right now, and it'll be coming out towards the end of the year, is called The Joy of Serving. And
I've
the subtitle is The Incredible Gift You Get When You Give.
Oh, I have chills down to my toes. Thank you. What a
Thank
gift.
you, Robin.
Thank you. Wonderful to be with you. I want
Mwah.
to be with you more. And thank you for your huge, huge contribution and legacy that you're leaving all over the world of uplifting everyone around. So thank you.
Picking up garbage off the reef.
You know, anybody can do that. Anybody can go out and pick and do a little thing every day. Okay.
Thanks, Robin.
Thank
All the
you.
best to all of your viewers. Mwah. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.